Hello, I'm Malcolm West and this is Project Management Basics, everything you need to make your project a success. In this session 6 we're going to be looking at delivering. Just like all the other sessions, practical, minimized jargon, going through the tools that you're going to use actually to deliver your project and aiming for about 10 minutes a session. So it's all about delivery, stupid. We're doing a project because we need to deliver something. We're producing something for the customer to their satisfaction, which is going to be the deliverable of the project. There may, of course, be multiple deliverables, and that's why we're talking about delivery now. It's quite common to deliver part of the project, get it signed off, then deliver the next bit, get it signed off, etc. You're building those blocks rather than sometimes you're just delivering one thing, it gets all signed off in one go, in which case, of course, it's going to be at the end. But often that's not the case, and often stages, in fact, are broken up into cycles or stages where you do something and then you go back and do the next bit again, and etc. etc. So it's good to think about the delivery, and actually, as we're going to go on and see, it's very important to think about aspects of what we're going to deliver at the very beginning, to include that in our plans, in our specifications. So we're going to use a little scenario here to just illustrate that point. We've got a meeting going on and we've asked somebody to provide some cakes for the meeting. What the customer is anticipating is something like this. Something very tasty, etc., and looks sophisticated and will impress the other meeting guests. What turns up is this. Not quite what they had in mind. So the question is it acceptable? Well, the answer is it depends on, to some extent, I mean, the customer's probably not going to be happy because it's not what they anticipated, but the actual technical project management answer is it depends what they wrote down in their specification. If they said, please provide me with high quality cakes, then clearly this isn't going to be acceptable. If they said, provide me with cakes, well, possibly it is. But there is obviously an element of uncertainty, and what you really don't want is uncertainty. You'd like things to be specified clear enough at the beginning so that everybody knows what's expected to be provided, and then you can clearly demonstrate that you have achieved it. And actually this is in your interests to do that, because if you don't, then the customer's goalposts can move away from you as the customer re-anticipates and thinks about what they want. That might well happen anyway, but then at least you can say, well, hold on, this isn't what we agreed at the beginning. It's going to change, it's going to cost more money, it's going to take longer. If they're always changing and you haven't really fixed the starting point, then you're in trouble. It's not going to work very well. So it's a good little illustration about cakes. Huge variation in what that could mean. So thinking about, is it acceptable, we're thinking about things like specification. What did you specify was required at the beginning? Have you linked it to some sort of standard? Is there some sort of documentation about what exactly is meant by a cake? And have you linked it to some sort of quality criteria, acceptance criteria? So quality wise, you might say, well, it's got to, you might list some of the attributes of it. So you might say, well, it's got to look good, it's got to taste good, it must have certain toppings on it, or whatever you're going to say, what the plate must look like, all those different sorts of things. And it's the same sort of thing with quality. And when we think about quality and testing, the cake might look great, but if you try it and it tastes horrible, that's not really very good either. So testing is important here. It's not just about the look of the thing or what the specification says, but does it actually do what it's supposed to do? So there's a whole load of things here which really you need to think about, and you can't really think about it right at the end because it needs to be in the specification, like I say, and the documentation to make it a workable thing. Yes, sometimes these things evolve along the way, but it's much better if you can think about those things at the very beginning. All sorts of other cases, use cases and things will come up in these discussions, but that's about what it's about. So it's not really about delivery, it's about acceptance, because you can deliver whatever you want or what you think is required, but if the customer's not going to accept it, the project isn't going to go very well. You can try ramming the customer into some sort of acceptance by trickery, I suppose, but really what you should have done is agreed with them up front, understood their requirements, costed and timed the planned the project on the basis of that, so that you can deliver what they wanted. If they can't afford it, well, they can't afford it. They'll have to make some changes, but you can't leave those expectations gaps in the project, or it won't be successful. So getting right back to the beginning, putting that stuff in your documentation, and making sure that that's managed appropriately. And like I say, if you are doing multiple stages, phases of delivery, you do one thing, then you come back and you do the next thing. You reset and go again. You finish the lunch break with the cakes. The meeting's going on, so now it's sort of about dinner. So we can put all the cake stuff behind us and get on to the next bit. And so, projects are temporary structures. They're not here forever. When you finish what you need for one thing, close it down, release the people back to their business, start again. Of course, this is a really good opportunity to update things like schedules, because until you've actually delivered the thing, you always think, well, yes, I'm halfway through it, but are you really halfway through it? The time you know when you are at a certain point is when you've just delivered something, because that's a very clear point, a marker in the plan. So it's a really good opportunity to, or a really good time to go back and update plans, risk and issue registers, communications documents, etc. So several things to do if you're staging your delivery on the way through. Really useful confidence boost to get things ticked off and out the way and visibly delivered. It helps you as a project manager, if it goes well, of course, to establish a good track record with the stakeholders in the project. So that's some of the theory of it. Let's go and have a look at some of that in practice. Of course, what we're really going to be focusing on here is about documentation. So we're going to go and take our community edition, which is where we're doing our documentation, and look at some of those documents that are in there. So we've got our existing project, and it's our office move project, and of course we're in deliver here. And here, like I say, we're working with that documentation. There are templates here to help us through that. We've got some product descriptions for the products we're actually wanting to produce, and we've got some work packages, which might be how we've grouped together those products and handed them over to one of our team to deliver that. So let's have a look at a couple of those templates, and then we'll go back and think about the plans, and then that'll be our simple look at delivery completed. So here we can see a product description. This is a Prince2 template. You may not need to use all these sections, but it's a really good, if you like, checklist of the things that you could include in here. So it's about what's the purpose of the product, how is it, how is it composed, what goes into it, how is it going to be provided, format and presentation. These are all things that are relevant to our cake example of earlier. The sort of skills that might be used, quality criteria, tolerances, method, etc. So this is about quality, and when you're defining your product, you can say a lot about what it might cost and how long it might take, but the real thing about the product is its quality. What is it actually delivering, and how is that demonstrable? So that's a sort of summary of the product, and like I say, these templates are useful because they've got some useful guidance in there explaining what sort of thing you might put in there and how to format it. Like I say, you might group your work packages together as we did in this example, so your products together into a work package and give it to somebody. I mean, a project may have many products. You might have 100 products you're producing, it might be 10 or 20, and they might be grouped together into technical areas, and that's what you do with your work packages here. And this has many of the same sort of things, but it also covers some other aspects. And of course, you can merge it all together into one document if you want to, if you're going to be nice and simple about it. So it's got many of the same sort of things. Here we're in a bit more detail about the processes and what we might go through to do that. The change control requirements. So if a change does come up in the project, how's that going to be handled? Down in here we've got some of those particular things we were talking about earlier, approval methods and a sign-off, a sheet to sign off to say, yes, I'm happy with what's been done. Often actually these things are emails or notes of meetings or test plans that have been filled out, signed off at the bottom as ticked off, everything's working. Those are the pieces of evidence that you need to collect, and you need to put them into your project as documentation. We talked about that before, how we can do all that by using the add file to bring a file in from our desktop or email or something and include it in our project documentation. So it's about collecting all that evidence. In fact, when it comes to the close process here, key thing is going to be to demonstrate that we've got the acceptance to sign off on all of that documentation. So a place to put it is really quite useful. Like I say, while we're doing this, we might come back and update our benefits management if we're doing benefits management, and update our plan and risk and issue register to reflect where we are. Now we've definitely delivered this particular aspect of the project. Okay, so let's just recap and move forward. So that's delivery. Next one we're going to have a look at is issues, where things go wrong on projects, and we're pushing on towards the end of our 10 sessions. Thank you very much.